Hello, and welcome to another episode of Reading Reddit with Amber. Happy Spooky Sunday! Today we're going to be reading the sequel to the story from last week, which was Unethical Life Pro Tip, How to Get Home When You've Missed the Last Train. I use creepy music in the background for these videos. The sound intensity varies depending on whether you're listening with headphones, so I've made a version that is optimized for headphone use and one that is best without. You are listening to the no headphones version. For the headphones version, click on the link in the description below. Alright, so our story for today is Unethical Life Pro Tip, How to Get Home When You've Missed the Last Train, The Lady in White, which is part 2. First of all, let me tell you how thrilled and excited I am to read that I am not the only one who boarded the train. Of course, if I shared instructions on how to do it, it's because I was fairly certain it would work, but you can agree that it's not the kind of topic you pull off with friends on a date night. Hey John, how's your wife? Did you know that if you stack 7 coins in front of a ticket booth at the train station, then you can board a supernatural train that brings you home? So yeah, I had never met anyone who'd been there as well. At least, not that I know of. I wonder where you're from, fellow traveler. I am in Europe, although I won't reveal the exact country. It's both reassuring and terrifying to think that the train might operate in the same exact way no matter where you are, and that for as long as you're on the train, time and space don't matter at all. Some of you also raised the point of losing memory being a huge trade-off for a ride home. Fair enough. I'd like to stress, though, that I never lost anything important as of now, except the one time I got off at the wrong station, but that's another story. It was just a few random things, as I said. Oh, and to further clarify, when I mentioned not remembering numbers, I meant telephone numbers. I also noticed I forgot some pieces of sentences here and there in my narration. Blame it on my bad English, or the fact that I was writing in a hurry. Or maybe, I'm really losing pieces of myself at a much faster rate than I'm noticing. But you know, I'm functioning, my life hasn't changed a tad, so I'll cross that bridge when the time comes. Besides, trust me, it's not the first time I've messed with the supernatural, and I really have nothing to lose. I already made plans to leave Pandora, my cat and the only thing waiting for me at home, to a trusted friend should anything grim happen to me. Anyway, the lady in white, right? And her darn fingers. Before I dive into the details, let me get something straight. While a few characters are cyclical and you see them on the train rather often, it's not like you always meet all the strange folk I describe. There's no script, sadly, or all of this would be a heck of a lot easier, wouldn't it? Like items in a video game, the train folks have a different drop rate possibility. I usually meet the kid in green about 90% of the time, the creepy music punk about half the time. It's a bit of a coin toss for him. The lady in white? She's only there about 20% of the time, maybe less. If you want to keep up the game comparison, she's a pretty rare item, but you always know it's going to be a difficult ride when you see her. You know, most of the other characters I routinely see are dressed roughly the same way every time I see them, and act in a rather predictable manner for the greatest part. There might be some variations, like the kid smashing the apple against a window and not on the floor, but it looks like they're mostly interested in always doing the same thing. After a while, I started to think of them as actors in a play. Yeah, you can always improvise to spice it up a little every once in a while, but in order for everything to go smoothly, you have to fulfill your role to the very end. Whether it's smashing somewhere an apple-shaped bomb full of worms, or giving another passenger the creeps by making them hear again and again about the time they peed themselves in front of the teacher, mixed with some serious guitar solos and sick drums. Like, take the old man with the pink umbrella. He always stands there, looking outside of the window, and rhetorically asking you, "Such terrible weather today, isn't it?" You just smile and nod, and he'll go back to staring out, eventually asking you the same thing a few minutes later. You nod, you smile, rinse and repeat. Even when he starts crying blood and vomiting that odd bluish goo, he's just there, asking you about the weather and toying with his umbrella. Poor fella means no harm. He's just sort of decomposing in front of you. But the lady in white is a different thing altogether. I think I've never seen her with the same outfit twice. I've seen her in sundresses, in fur jackets, in leather, in skirts, in jeans. I've seen her with long or short hair, black or blonde, with elaborate makeup and more natural looks. The only really constant thing about her is that she's dressed in pure white from head to toes, always. Even all the accessories she wears, rings, necklaces, boot strings, everything is immaculate and shiny. Hence the nickname. If you're sitting on the train, she'll sit right next to you. If you're standing, she'll stand in front of you, close enough for you to feel her breath on your neck. And she freaking remembers you. While everybody else's memories of your previous times on the train seem to be wiped out by the next time you board, she seems to remember you quite fine. Or at least, she seems to remember me. Your mileage may vary. But no matter if you're brand new or a loyal customer, she'll do absolutely anything and everything to make you speak. Say you have a dog you care about very much. She'll somehow know about that already, and she'll either start telling you all about how she loves dogs and how they're the best pets in the world, or, on the contrary, she'll number all the reasons why they're dumb and useless and will go into gory details about how they should be purged from the planet. It all depends on her mood, honestly. Can such a being even be in a bad mood? I don't know, but there are definitely times when she seems to try even harder to get on your nerves. Anyway, and this should really, really be obvious, but let me state it again, don't speak. Ignore her. Concentrate on the punk song about your mom's suicide if you must, but do not speak to her. Heck, eat the apple and all its frickin' worms if that's what it takes. So is that it, you must be wondering? She'll bash on everything that you hold dear, hoping to make you flip out enough to tell her to F off. Granted, some mother-in-laws out there do that to their in-laws every day, so a fair portion of you might be pretty trained at ignoring this BS. But her eloquent use of words and the fact that she seems to know everything you hate and love is just the tip of the iceberg. Because if she's only obnoxious when she speaks, she can truly give her worst when you don't fall for her easy tricks. That's when you see her changing, and the aforementioned fingers are likely the first thing you'll see. You know, she's usually a rather attractive being. I don't dare to call her a woman, nope. At least until you really and truly focus on the details. Imagine texting with an alien and having to describe to them how a human looks, but without being able to use any pictures. Imagine them drawing their idea of a human being based on what you said, and you'll get the lady in white. Her mouth is just a tad too tiny for it to be natural, and her eyes a bit too big. Her arms are too short, and her legs, on the opposite, are extremely long and thin. Her feet are so small they could be a product of foot binding. Still, for the most part, she retains this sort of cohesive human appearance, and a quite harmonious and pleasant one at that. Unless you ignore her. During my first couple of trips, I had tricked myself into believing that staring ahead at nothing would be the best way to keep her snarky remarks out of my brain. You know, just disconnect your eyes from your brain without focusing on anything in particular until her fingers waved in front of my face as if they possessed a will of their own. I could clearly see them turn from slightly short but average-looking fingers into spindly and almost disarticulated appendages of flesh and bones. I'm sure they must have had at least 6 or 7 knuckles at some point, but I never really dared to count. Don't do what I did and resist the urge to gasp or to react in any way. That only fuels her insanity. And for the love of what's holy, do not let her touch you under any circumstance. And do not touch her either, even if the temptation to shove her away will be pretty hard to smother. Who would want Miss Snake Fingers all over them, trying to brush off a lock of your hair with her unnaturally long index finger? Of course, you'd want to push her as hard as you can and run for your life. Well, don't. And take my word on this, her fingers are nothing compared to what she can and will do to try and get your attention. I've seen her ribcage open like a blooming flower below her short crop top, guts hanging out and coiling around her waist like a belt. I've seen bones protruding from her spine like fins on a shark's back. She can twist and bend and rip herself open in ways you can't even imagine. She'll even go as far as to lean onto you and whisper some lewd words into your ear as God only knows what mangled part of her body brushes against your skin, making you really crave to bathe in acid just to brush away the temptation. And it took me a while to realize why all of this was happening. Why she could talk for what seemed like hours about how Metallica was the worst band that ever existed, or why she'd let her eye pop out of her socket and brush against my neck while whispering how sexy I looked in my dirty white t-shirt and mud-stained jeans, leaving a trail of charred skin wherever her inquisitive blue iris was grazing my skin. Because if the punk guy just wants to crack you emotionally, the Apple Kid just wants to shock you, and the Umbrella Man, well, he barely exists and sort of decomposes in front of you. The Lady in White has one goal, and one only. She wants you to miss your stop. Because, you see, Taken individually, none of the train's threats look difficult to avoid. You just don't pay attention to the punk's song, no matter how personal it gets. You politely refuse the apple while nodding at the umbrella man, and not the opposite, please. You try to step aside and think about cute kittens to avoid both the lady's venomous words and her improbable shapeshifting. But after a while, it becomes like a real-life version of the Simon game, where you need to keep pressing the correct buttons in the correct order not to lose. Granted, it gets automatic after a while, a sort of second nature, a survival instinct if you want. Willing or not, you end up becoming another actor in this complex play. You have your own part, with its own little variations, but your end goal is always the same: getting home. It becomes second nature, and that's exactly when the fatal mistakes happen. You know those parents, right? Their brain goes on autopilot during their daily routine. They strap their kid in the car, drop the other kid at school, get a coffee on the way to the office, and sprint up to finish that report they're awfully late for, until something clicks and they go back to their car hours later to find their kid baked to a crisp in the back, still strapped into the seat. Everything looked normal, until it wasn't, and it's too late to fix it now that your kid is dead. It's similar. You are on the train and you just know you are nodding when you should, you are dodging with the right timing, and that painful reminder of your sister's death while giving birth is floating around without really reaching that part of your mind where it hurts, and you're singing the song to the man in the bear suit. I told you all about him, didn't I? It's all flawless. You got it. You're acing it and you'll soon be home. It's all good. It's all fine. Until it's not. And it's too late to fix it. That's how I realized I had not been counting the stops. That's how I got off the train the first time my stop was mentioned. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider giving it a like or letting me know in the comments. And if you're enjoying this series, be sure to let me know. If you do, I'll keep my eyes out for the sequels and then read them when they come out. Thanks for watching and have a great day.